So to give you a bit of background, John Carvalho is the CEO of Synonym. He is a visionary when it comes to building tools that make Bitcoin and the internet more integrated, yet also more decentralized and user-empowering. His work at Synonym to date has led to the creation of the BitKit wallet. Any BitKit users in the house? Couple of hands. Yeah, nice. Some big fans over there as well. Oh, you've got the T-shirt on. It makes sense. OK, and his work at Synonym is focused on creating a future where individuals have greater control over their data, privacy, interactions, which align, of course, with the core principles of Bitcoin. He's spoken here before at the Plan B Forum. He's going to speak again, I'm sure. Please give it up for John Carvalho, the CEO of Synonym. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Joe. Check, check. OK, so I'm not going to talk about Bitcoin today, sorry. But all this stuff is very relevant to Bitcoin and the mission of Bitcoin, so I hope you will find it interesting nonetheless. My name is John Carvalho. I am CEO at a company called Synonym. At Synonym, we are basically trying to make an ecosystem of software and services, open source software and services, that will help people not be so dependent and locked into big banks, big tech, and big states. So we're trying to basically recreate the way that the digital economy works and the way that the web works in a way where the user is in control. So today's presentation is called The Next Web, where you are the algorithm. What is the problem with the web? Why do we need to fix it? Well, the web has been captured. As all of you know, you're using websites pretty often where you have social media where they're feeding you things, they're using their algorithms, and you hear people complaining and experience yourself that either these algorithms are maybe designed to trigger you and engage you and just get more activity from everybody. In other words, the algorithms are working for somebody else trying to get you to do things. Or there may be, you click on one video where somebody's having a fight and now you're getting a bunch of fight videos. Or, you're getting propaganda and misinformation. Whatever it may be, having these central sources for algorithms has been poisoned. And it's not something that is really working for the user's intent for the problems they're trying to solve when they're actually using applications. Another problem, and here are some examples of some headlines related to poisoned algorithms and things like this. People getting fined billions, millions, whether it's Google, Facebook, et cetera. You can find many headlines about this. And that's going to be true of all three of these qualities I'm going to talk about. The second one would be censorship. Of course, not only is the truth just suppressed by what they put in the algorithms, but it's also by what they take out of the algorithms and what they take out of their platforms, kicking people off for saying things that maybe or maybe we don't even know are true about COVID, just generally getting in the way of people discovering the truth. And so censorship and people being kicked off of things, banned, blocked, shadow banned, et cetera, is another major issue. You have more examples of headlines here where you have Meta and State Department disinformation. This is all real stuff that's become very apparent, especially to people that are not just only following mainstream media for their information. And then finally, the third problem is what I call walled gardens. And this is just the idea that once you get into one of these systems, one of these platforms, you're kind of locked in. You can't get out. So when they do ban you or block you, you kind of lose all of your content, you lose all of your connections, you lose your followers, whatever it may be for the platform you're getting kicked off of. Or even if the platform goes out of business, now you're kind of just going to lose that whole environment where you were acting. And so walled gardens are another issue. We need to find ways that people don't locked in and more interoperability across the web. Again, some headlines you can take a look at later. So let's fix this, right? This is not a new idea. These are not new problems. These are things talked about a lot. So we're not the first people to try to say that we're going to try to fix it. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of the people that have already. One is this protocol called ActivityPub, which is used by Threads, which is Facebook Meta's platform to compete with Twitter. Also Mastodon. Mostly this introduced the concept of a federated server where effectively what it let people do is just make their own Twitter. So you could have another Twitter. And so you didn't have interoperability or portability across these different social platforms. You just had an alternative. So that helped, but didn't address all three of the problems. Matrix, similar federated servers, good with end-to-end encryption, lots of good matrix chat software, things like this, like Element. But again, this is not really addressing all of the kind of social issues that you need to address in order to truly address when you have a public platform where you're being censored or trapped, etc. And of course, Nostr is probably the one people in this room are the most familiar with, because Nostr was kind of born adjacent to Bitcoin and thus also uses a lot of the narratives of Bitcoin. Nostr, what they did was they figured out a way to make it really simple to have a key-based web. But the trade-off of that making it really simple was not actually addressing the system in a comprehensive way to deal with the problems that people will actually have in a key-based web, like what happens when you lose your key, what happens if your key is censored, what happens if your relay is misbehaving, excluding information, etc. There are ways to address these things individually, but the problem is Nostr is already out in the wild and live, and so in order to fix some of these problems, they're going to have to break things, somehow coordinate a very fragmented network, and so there's going to be a lot of limitations and difficulty to getting it to be where, I guess I would say, public web solution would need to be. Granted, all of these protocols have made great progress, so don't take this as me talking bad about any of them. We're building on some of their work, indeed. The final one here is the AT protocol, which was funded by Twitter originally when Jack was still there, and it was meant to be like kind of the open solution alternative to Twitter. That has since, I think, separated into a separate organization, but they're doing pretty well. The differences here are maybe that they're using a more complicated structure for using keys for IDs called DID, something our team isn't a big fan of. And the way that they've implemented it is very social-centric, and some of the ways they've tried to cover some of the problems maybe Nostr missed have also been a little bit glossed over with centralized solutions, whether they're temporary or not. So let's talk about ourselves a little bit. So what do I actually think the key is to an open web? Well, today we're going to introduce an ecosystem called PubKey, P-U-B-K-Y. The first aspect of it is PubKey Core. PubKey Core is all of the software and architecture that we've created, open source, to be able to create and solve the problems that I mentioned with new applications. PubKey Core is a decentralized web protocol. It handles identity management, control over your keys and your data, and has decentralized data routing and hosting. This is important because we use this thing called PKAR. Yes, I know it's a weird acronym name, but it means something very literal: public key addressable resource records. You can think of it as if you've ever had a website or purchased a domain name, and you've had to kind of point that domain name somewhere to actually have the content of your website, right? Well, PKAR is DNS records, except they're signed by your own key. They're DNS records you control and you publish, but you publish them on mainline DHT. And what makes this really cool, why this is interesting, is because this solves a major, major problem for decentralization and censorship regarding a key-based web, because it puts the user in control of the routing. Basically, when you go and look me up by my key, you have a place that you can look me up that is extremely decentralized and very difficult to censor. And when you look up my key, you will always find the right location to find my data. So if I am censored, if I have a problem where my home server, is what we're calling our servers, is not available anymore, you can simply update your records to point to a new server. That server could be one you run yourself. That server could be one somebody else runs. It doesn't really matter in the grand sense. It's up to you to decide who you want to trust and where you want to put your data. And if they misbehave, you can always change that. So it's a really cool new way to approach key-based webs and to approach censorship, walled gardens, etc. Home servers, maybe a good way to put this is, the difference here is, if you look at, say, Nostr, which uses relays, they're trying to have a lot of redundancy. You're trying to say, I want my data on as many different servers as possible here. Well, one difference that we've done is we assign a primary server. We say, this is the place that you're supposed to look. There is one primary place. You can still have redundancy in more places you could get it, and you can notify people that through your PKAR records. But you have this kind of confidence where people know this is the place I'm supposed to look, and other places are redundant. So the reason why some of this kind of matters is when we talk about the walled garden aspect, the cure for that is basically what's called a credible exit. This is an actual, realistic, practical way for you to leave the system that has ejected you and move over to a new provider without losing anything significant. You know, you maybe lose a little bit of time, of uptime for your website or something like that, but you can basically hot swap where you're located on the internet just by updating these records with your key. This also helps you not have to put your keys inside of every app. Because of Picard, you can have things like key delegation, key rotation, simply by keeping your Picard key cold and then designating other keys underneath that key in the records. The PubKey core system is, despite trying to fix the web, we are not trying to break the web. It is HTTP friendly. You will find that you can still use things that work with the normal web with PubKey stuff. PubKey Core is available now. We open sourced all of the current stuff for the home server, for Picard, for mainline DHT, to be able to set this up yourself. Please check it out if you're a developer. Let me know how it goes. Now I want to talk about the next part of the PubKey ecosystem, which is the PubKey app, where we actually get to unlock the web for the users, not just builders. The PubKey app motto is unlock the web, obviously. It is a progressive web app, which means it's not an app that you get in the App Store. It's basically a lot like a website, which you can open in any device, mobile, desktop, laptop, doesn't matter. And part of the reason for this is that the app stores actually are a walled garden, and in order to have certain features within your applications, you have to meet certain requirements in these walled gardens. Some of the features that they tend to censor or tend to make very difficult to approve are features we definitely want in the PubKey app, so we've made it more of this progressive web app format instead of a native app. The app lets you basically publish to this web and perform social tagging using the semantic social graph. I will explain all these things. The architecture, of course, uses PubKey Core for identity with Picard, home servers for data hosting, Picard for the decentralized data sharing and routing, and then what we call the Nexus indexer, which helps for curation and basically providing views on the social graph to the users. And the web, in this web, you are a key. You are the key. This is a key-based web. I want to make that clear that PubKey app is a key-based app as well. This is a little preview of the PubKey app and what it looks like, and this first section is just showing you how what we're trying to show people is this isn't just like a Twitter alternative or a Nostr competitor or something like this. This is more like the idea of if you were to go to Google, and Google was actually like a social media website where you could actually reply to anything in Google, any news article or anything like this, except now it's all the data is in this place where you can rearrange the data and display it how you like to create the application and use case that you're looking for. So here we show how there's four different ways to view the data just on the page, which is this 3-column view like you have with social media sites, a wide view like you might have like with forum sites or Reddit or things like this, because we have threads and support threading as well. A focus view, which is more like seeing one thing at a time, like maybe a long article or using it on your mobile phone. And then a visual view, which is basically meant to show you how you could take the same data and you could, even though the data that you would show in the first view, in the columns view, and make it look like Twitter, you could take that same data and you could make it look like Instagram or TikTok or something like this, just simply by changing the view, and then also by choosing different post types. And so we have this kind of paradigm of what we do. Because this isn't just a social media website, it isn't technically exactly a search engine, we have this concept of post types. So when you are making a post, it isn't just a text field that you can embed images in and this kind of thing. You can actually make a specific type of post. So this way, when people are filtering the PubKey web, they can choose which types of posts they want to see as well. So if, say, for example, you're using the visual view and you only want to see images in that view, obviously, then you can basically say, only show me these post types. You can post notes, articles, images, videos, files. These last two are interesting. Files and links are not normal things you would see as post types or things you would post and social media, because again, this is more like a mix. It's like a social search engine or something like this. I don't know. But the idea here is we're going to continually add more post types as kind of ways to emulate different application use cases within the PubKey app. The coolest part, in my opinion, about all of this so far is that we've made a taggable web. This isn't just hashtags or, I don't know, the tags that you see in your phone in an app when you're just designating something. This is actually a social process where we've taken the idea of these poison algorithms, these centralized algorithms, and we've inverted it. So now the users are actually the ones creating the algorithms by tagging things. So when you are responding to one of these post types in PubKey app, there's no like button, there's no upvote button, there's nothing like that. There's just, you can add a tag or you can add your count to pre-existing tags that other people have already added. So the example you can see here where we've got this post where I'm tagging it, and I can tag it as Bitcoin, I can tag it as base, I can if I wish there was a like button, I could just tag it with a heart emoji, and then everybody who wants to do that can just tap on the heart emoji to add one more count to it. The idea here is that we're creating what's called a semantic social graph, and what that does is it creates relationship between points. And so you say, okay, like if I tag Joe as Bitcoiner, now there's me, and there's Bitcoiner in the middle, and there's Joe. And so this is like a relationship in the graph. And we can create all these relationships across people and across the posts. So you can tag the posts as well. And the reason that we do this is because we want to make it so that you're the algorithm. You are the algorithm now. So you control the experience instead of relying on us to provide the feeds for you. You actually decide what you want your feeds to be made out of. And you can construct more than one feed. This is like a step beyond having more than one feed in Twitter. This is actually being able to drill down and only see the types of content through a metadata aspect. Instead of like doing a search and finding this word inside of a post, it's actually about the post. And this is a very powerful tool for people because now they can decide, they can make their own algorithms and weight things the way that they care about. So you could have, say, I don't know, maybe you're doing research and you want to make a certain perspective on this semantic graph. And you say, okay, I want to see all of the posts from people that I tagged as golfers and all of the posts that they've made that are tagged as weather. And now I want to make this feed that is just showing me all these things golf people are saying about the weather. You could just take any kind of context like that, and you could be very creative with it if you think about it. Of course, you can have more than one of these feeds, so you can switch through them. So, in summary, how exactly are we fixing the three problems that I started with? I mentioned the poison algorithms. Well, now you are the algorithm, right? So even though you could still technically choose to follow a specific algorithm within the PubKey core structure, we have indexers, the Nexus indexer that we use for our own. There are ways to achieve that if that's what you want, but the natural way that the application and the system works is that you're the one actually choosing which metadata to include. The censorship problem is now alleviated because you have Picard and you have home servers. So whenever anybody wants to censor you, all they can do is make it so they're not the ones serving your data anymore. You can either serve it yourself, or you can find someone else that will serve your data and just move the whole experience over there without losing the actual, with the whole system staying intact as far as replies and all of the people that you've interacted with and followers and such. And then, of course, the walled garden problem. Because the home servers, like I just explained, allow you to exit, there's no way for somebody to trap you within the PubKey core system. So you don't have to be trapped within their garden. You can just move freely towards whatever other service provider you want, or host it yourself. So the semantic social graph, I mentioned this before. This is kind of a new concept. I'm bringing it up before we end to talk about it in a little more detail, because again, this is my favorite part, the social tagging and the semantic social graph. Semantic social graph is a concept or a new way of thinking about what other people would talk about as the web of trust in the past. The web of trust concept is simply, I can binary decide whether I trust Pete over here, and I can say, yes, I do trust him. And then you can make a system around that and say, okay, all the people John trusts do this or that. But the problem is, I don't trust Pete to cut my hair. I might trust Pete to write a blog post for me or something to do with writing, but so I can tag him and I can say, okay, Bitcoiner or journalist or whatever, these kinds of things, but I'm not going to tag him as a barber, right? I'll tag somebody else as a barber, and I'll separate these concerns. And I just think this is really cool, and it adds a dimension, adds actually multiple dimensions to the concept of Web of Trust. It goes from having Web of Trust be this kind of distance thing where it's only whether I trust you and whether to go 1 degree further, like do I want to trust the people that Pete trusts? And that's how Web of Trust works. But Semantic Social Graph takes that and it says, how much do I trust Pete? So I can have a range to the amount, a weighting to the amount that I trust him. And in what context? I can say journalist, this kind of thing. And so now we've added these dimensions to it, and I can still do the distance graphing. I can say, okay, now tell me all the people that Pete thinks are journalists, and show me data from them. And I can keep extending outward and outward. So instead of asking a centralized search engine to go and find something specific that I'm looking for, I'm telling the whole graph to remove the things I'm not looking for. So I hope you think that's cool too. I hope you check out the ideas and research it further. The PubKey app will go into a private beta next month, so it's not public yet. We were doing our best to have it ready, but we want to make sure it's really nice before we expose it to the public. So we're doing a private beta first. The PubKey Core demo week will start tomorrow. So for those of you that are interested in building with PubKey Core, then every single day for the next week, we're going to release a new demo, open source code, a video, an explanation, showing you some of the different things that you could build with all of this. If you want to contribute, you can go to github.com/pubkey, where all the code is. And that's about it. Thanks, guys.